All right, it is the Pete Souza Show, and we welcomed in esteemed writer, columnist for the Fort Worth Star-Telegram. Been at it for a very long time. Mac Engel, what's happening, dude?
Not a lot, Pete. Thank you very much for having me on. I really appreciate it. How are you this morning?
I'm hanging. A little like, it's funny. I thought I was a totally normal person until I started this thing up, and I actually started to talk about this whole college football playoff experience. Mm-hmm. And then my true feelings start to shine through. It does make me appreciate that I have a platform. I'm really frustrated with Notre Dame fans and Notre Dame not going to the bowl, although there's a shred of me that tries to understand. I think BYU got jobbed. But I expected that, which is weird, so it didn't surprise me. You had a great point. You tweeted a day or two ago, the college football playoff, I guess it was yesterday, since it's expanded to 12 teams, 3 group of 5 teams, 2 Big 12 teams. Let's start there. Can you make sense of that for me?
No. It's such a slap in the face. It is such a slap in the face at the whole Power 4, we're better than you idea, right? We sit here and say Power 4, and then we think about the whole idea that there's going to be a super conference and all this other stuff. That line has already been drawn, right? We've already seen it. And really, as you and I both know, this is not a playoff. This is a big SEC 10 invitational. That's what
I was thinking the same thing. Yeah.
That's what it is. And then you have this massive independent that is unlike anything else in Notre Dame, sort of sitting above all of it, getting to play God or not. And then you have however many teams are in the Big 12 now, 16, sitting there saying how great they are, but the playoff selection committee says, yeah, no, you're not. You get 2 teams in 2 years. And then you have a group of 5 teams that have tons and tons of schools which are mostly all public institutions in all these different states. Well, they complain a lot. And then, they play each other, then they get 12-1 or 12-0. Then the metrics look really, really good. And you've got this data point and this data point. And they say, okay, we're going to put them in. And then the other thing that's sort of silently existing off into the side is the fact all of the people making these decisions are all friends. Well, or at least friendly and have professional relationships. And they've got to try to keep this thing and keep all of the anger at bay. So how do you do that? Well, then you give everybody one spot, right? And you kind of take turns. So that's why I thought, there's no way they're ever going to deny a conference champion, or not even necessarily a conference champion. Let me take that back. A team from every conference. So we're going to put Miami in. Well, Duke won the conference championship. Yeah, but they're not the best. So we're going to put Miami in. Okay. Now you got a group of 5. We got all these group of 5 teams. Okay, then they get it. They get a spot. Well, they got this really impressive resume too. Okay, well, they'll get 2 spots. Well, what about the Big 12? Well, clearly Texas Tech's better than everybody else. So they're going to get 1 spot. Well, BYU, yeah, but they lost twice to the same team. So how really good can that conference be? And by doing that, everybody just gets a taste, right, of the cake. Well, everybody in the Big 10, they get fat and happy, as well as the SEC. So you have this massive mess that everybody keeps saying, oh, it's dying, it's unsustainable, it's broken. No, it's not true. It's not true. It's making money hand over fist. Gambling now is out of the closet. That's driving an enormous part of it. We can't help but watch it because it's such a fun reality TV drama soap opera show. And it's just flawed. That's it. It's just flawed. But I keep watching it. It drives me crazy.
Yeah.
And this is where we are. And whatever change that they're going to make, and they'll make some other modification to it, it'll be the same thing. So they're going to go to 16 teams, right? They will. And then 17 and 18 will complain and whine, oh, this is an affront to society. This does a disservice. And it'll just keep going and going. And they keep changing it and tweaking it. But the most important thing I have learned is that those in charge, they protect their bottom line. That's the priority. And as long as that happens, none of this is going to stop.
When you look at I was looking up, I'm familiar with the committee, but not terribly familiar. So yesterday, I called it up and I looked and saw, okay, everybody that's in that room and on that committee.
Right. And this white guy thing.
Dude. And I'm not like that guy, but that jumped off the page at me. I mean, It's like, yo, I was like, because I looked at all the headshots. I was like, well, that's interesting. That lends itself to.
Wasn't there one that stood out?
Yeah, the one minority who's a female.
Right.
I'm like, wow.
Worst. It's like a South Park episode, right?
So that definitely grabbed me. Now, those guys, do they like when they get in that room? And I guess I can take this into BYU, because when you call up the numbers for BYU, their strength of schedule, their strength of record, both of those, and their record's right there with Miami and Notre Dame, and their strength of record and strength of schedule are far better than those two schools. So what are we basing these decisions on? Are we now more eye test and less data because there's more human element involved? What can you tell me about that?
So a number of years ago, the College Football Playoff Selection Committee, or CFP, every year they do like a mock selection process for members of the media. It's at a hotel in Grapevine. I'm pretty sure it's at the same hotel where they actually do the voting. And I got to be involved in that once. This 5 or 8 years ago. And I think they do it every year. And I was happy to do it. And it was enlightening. So you put in 12 of us who go through a mock selection process. And it was based on the prior year's results. And you see in that process how ultimately flawed it is, and how you can take virtually any data point, any anecdote to make your argument, even though it contradicts what you said about a different team. So you can't really win. And at the end of it, the human element trumps all of it, which is, well, it's Ohio State.
Yeah.
So you got to put them in. And so that's why when I saw what I saw yesterday with BYU getting the shaft, it wasn't just that BYU got the shaft. And I don't know if you noticed this, but they lost at 2:00. Game was over at 1:00 effectively. Probably by noon. But by 5:00, they weren't even part of the conversation. Did you notice that?
Yes,
and didn't even exist.
And that was one of the most frustrating, because Kalani Sitake said after the game, just show us on the graphic. He didn't even get that. Like, they really weren't a part of that picture. Nope. Once the day continued to matriculate. Yes.
And so now you've just the human element, and whoever's running the ESPN, Chiron system or whatever, the graphic system, says, who do we need up there? Well, we don't have enough room for BYU. It's too many letters. So we're not even going to put them on the screen. And it's Miami and a handful of group fives. And I thought BYU totally got the shaft. And the thing that's frustrating to me as someone who likes the Big 12, because it's a really entertaining league. I'm not fooling myself. The Big 12 is not as good as the SEC. I know that.
Yeah.
But I would say this. If we're going to tether success now with teams that can really raise a lot of money, I'm sorry, you better start talking about BYU. That university has a lot of money. And ask Penn State, right? So this idea, I mean, we saw what Texas Tech has done with Cody Campbell as, clearly, probably the single most influential donor this side of Phil Knight. And obviously Phil's not doing for Oregon what he had done 20 years ago. But I think you've got to really look at what BYU has done and their ability to raise money. Look what they did for their basketball program. So if we're going to sit there and look what everybody's sitting there saying, well, look at Vanderbilt. How did Vanderbilt do it? Well, because they could pay guys now. How did Duke get that quarterback? Well, you can pay guys now. Well, BYU can do that. And if that's a metric, which it was for Texas Tech, which it was for Vanderbilt, then you better apply that to BYU too. Because to me, monetarily speaking, they are at the top of the Big 12 and they can compete financially with just about with most big state schools. Maybe not Texas, maybe not Ohio State or Michigan or Penn State, but they're in that conversation. And the part that frustrated me was, wait a minute, this is all about money. That school's got more money than I can count, and you're not even acknowledging them. That's a major flaw.
Another flaw that I feel is upon us, and you touched on it with the human element. This is one part reality show and one part real life. I mean, the games get played on the field. Yeah. I was so compelled, or I found it so compelling that, Notre Dame is banging the drum about getting in over Miami when they lost to them on the field. And to me, it's like, then the committee, maybe you could say, is responsible for leading them on or whatever, getting their hopes up. But, during the season, when there was, I guess, BYU was between Miami and Notre Dame for a little bit, then BYU leaves. And so now they're back to back. So then you have to look at the on the field results. But did you find that surprising how we are now less and less of a factor is the head-to-head matchup? That is the one thing that blows my mind wide open, Mac.
Yeah, because the first year, this was in my backyard. This point really hit my backyard because I live in Fort Worth, not too far from TCU. In 2014, when going into the final ranking of the first ever college football playoff selection process, TCU, I think, was like third. And then they go out and they absolutely destroy, and that TCU team was good. They go out and they absolutely destroy Iowa State by like 50 points. And then the final ranking comes, and TCU is not in the top 4. And then I think they were behind Baylor because TCU, or maybe they were ahead of Baylor, I can't remember. But the point is, that TCU team was really good. I mean, they had a lot of dudes on that team. That Baylor team was really good. Well, Baylor had defeated TCU back in, I think, in October of that year in an epic game. It was like 63-56 or something. I can't remember what it was. But it was one of these crazy games, and it was a hell of a lot of fun. But Baylor won that game. And that part of the conversation never came up. It was like, well, TCU got screwed. And it did because of where the rankings were. But no one ever really wanted, outside of Waco, Texas, no one wanted to factor in the fact, well, Baylor beat TCU. You guys both finished with 1 loss. So wait a minute. How does this math? Well, it doesn't. And that's part of the flaw of this selection process that drives me crazy. I wouldn't have had any problem had Notre Dame been put in. If you go look at Notre Dame's schedule, they barely lost to Miami on the road, a good Miami team. They lost by a point in the final minute to a very good Texas A&M team. They run the table, beat Pitt, it's pretty good. USC is pretty good. And everybody rips their schedule, and justifiably so, but everybody bags on their schedule. To me, I'm like, no, that would have been, if they put them in the last team, I would have had no problem with Notre Dame getting it. The problem, and I'm curious to see what you think about this, my issue with this particular one, the Alabama one, is based purely on the name of the front of the jersey. Purely. If that was named Kentucky, if that was named South Carolina, or pick some other Missouri or Arkansas, they're not getting in. They're only getting in because of the name on the front of the jersey. The part that just confounded me is that they accommodated 2 group of 5 teams. I'm like, why would you do that? I mean, and now they've set themselves up. Most of these playoff games, as we know, most of them have been blowouts. Most of them are 2-score games, right? But the good ones are amazing, right? The good ones, like, holy cow, this is remarkable. And we had a handful of good games last year, but go look in that first round. The first round were all dogs. And now with these 2 group of 5 teams, they better hope that they give them a game, because I don't know if you looked at the point spreads, they're huge.
Huge.
And we saw SMU was really good. They go to Happy Valley against Penn State and get run out of the building before the end of the first quarter. Not even close.
Yeah.
And that's a different part. That's a different problem for college football. But in terms of this selection process and Notre Dame, the griping about Notre Dame and the head-to-head, if you're going to use a head-to-head, then Miami has to get in Notre Dame.
That's all I'm saying.
Who can argue with that?
Yeah.
I mean, I don't. The challenge I have is, you really think Notre Dame at that record is not as good as James Madison?
Well, but that's a whole nother conversation.
Yeah.
I totally agree. But the way that they've laid this out for us, right? Like, this makes the most sense. And like you, if Notre Dame had gotten in, I would not have been a fan of it, but you live with it. It's Notre Dame, really. And they are, you can almost take in their body of work last year, really, I mean, this is my issue was, there was a head-to-head between these 2 teams. Notre Dame won. So in that case, I think we all just move on with life. Notre Dame definitely moves on because they're not playing in that bowl game. Where do you weigh in on that? I mean, because that's another thing, they know more than you and I know there in South Bend right now, where the interest is among the players. I know this from calling games for ESPN, and I always say, I'm not Adam Schefter, right? I'm not Reese Davis, but I'm in the room with a lot of guys who are really connected just by calling games with analysts and stuff. And I heard that Florida State, when they lost that bid, and they got knocked out of the 14 playoff and the quarterback's hurt, that alumni base and the powers that be were pissed that they decided to play that game in the Orange Bowl because they got annihilated, right? And so that brings about that recent history, and knowing that information makes me wonder, who really made this decision for Notre Dame not to play in this game, and does it come, at the sacrifice of these young men who maybe want to play another game, who maybe need some more tape to get into an NFL camp? That surprises me.
The one thing I've recognized about those guys, well, it's not, it's just men and women playing major Division I college sports. When they're near the end, they just want it to end. And they don't recognize the gravity of that decision. Because for most all of them, when it's over, when they've played their last game, that was their last game.
Yeah.
And they fail to see what we as adults know, which is those are some of the most special times in your life. The chance to be in that locker room, the chance to be on that bus, the chance to sit there at dinner with all your buddies. The game is great. And the chance to stand there on a sideline one more time in front of people who want to watch outside of mom and dad and brothers and sisters and boyfriends and girlfriends and all that stuff. And they don't see that. They're sick of training table. They're sick of the weight room. They're sick of the 6 a.m. practice or what. They're sick of the schedule. They just want to break, and they can't see how special it is. Deion Sanders may be full of it, but he talked about it last year before they played in the Alamo Bowl against BYU. He talked about how special opportunity it is just to play that game. And, like I said, he's full of it, but he's right a lot of times. And I don't think those Notre Dame kids or the Kansas State kids or the Iowa State kids, all these different teams that have said, yeah, we don't want to play that bowl, they don't see it. And in 3 months, they're like, oh, man, or in 3 years, they're going to say, God, I wish we had played one more game. Even if it didn't matter, just played one more game. And I understand that it's made out of anger. It's made out of frustration. And what Notre Dame did was a disservice, I think, to what everybody else is doing, which is, hey, you lost. I give TCU a lot of credit. I give Gary Patterson a lot of credit. That team really got jobbed in 2014. And he came, first thing he said is, we're going to play in the Peach Bowl and we're going to play as well as we can. And we're going to show them they got it wrong. And they went out and they blew out Ole Miss. That's what you should do, because you're not always going to be invited. And you're part of a greater system here, a system that has been incredibly beneficial to the leadership that have made these decisions to opt out and all that. I hate the decision. It doesn't surprise me anymore, but it's what it is. And until you structure punitive contracts with the players that says you only get this money if you see it through to the end, which includes games potentially ending on January 15th, then this is not going to stop. And the only way that stops or that changes is if there's collective bargaining with these contracts. And I don't know when the hell that's going to happen.
How about this, though, man? Are we short on storylines or what? Not even close. I mean, last week we're losing our minds about the Lane Kiffin and coaches leaving early. And then how quickly we forget. Now it's all about this. I mean, this is a really masterpiece put on.
Well, how long have you followed? I don't know how old you are. How long have you followed it?
I've followed it since I can remember. In 1990, I was a big Colorado fan because the year before the Saul and Nessie thing really got me in like a tractor beam. So I was invested, and they lost the Orange Bowl in '89. Then they won it in '90, and I was like, wait a minute, they got to share it with Georgia Tech? And I was like, somebody make. And now, Mac, that's the best thing. That one is such below the radar. You talk to anybody from Georgia Tech or Colorado in 1990, it's like we won the national championship. Like there is no sharing.
Right.
So good for them. I guess it worked out. But that was the moment I was really, as a younger man, like, man, this is screwed up. Yeah. So I've been at it for a while.
So if that's one of your launch points into the sport, and I think for me, because I grew up in Indiana, for me it was more, Notre Dame was the good team. And so I liked the good team that was 2.5 hours up the road. I had no idea at the time that South Bend, Indiana really wasn't in Indiana. there's Notre Dame campus, right? There's Notre Dame, Indiana, and then there's South Bend, and the two really didn't like to mix. So I didn't know that. But the success of that team and Rocket Ismail, that was my sort of entry point into college football. And I love it because of all the things that you just said, storylines and all that. But I did notice this back in the summer as I was reporting on it and writing about it. And some of it has to do with my job, is that you see how the sausage is made. I did notice for the first time my thirst and love of watching this, because it's become so transactional and so just money. And I don't blame anybody involved. I get it. We're not talking about $5,000. We're talking about $550,000 or $3.5 million. Big sums of money. And when that's involved, that's the priority. So I understand that as an adult, but I know that as a consumer, which is what this is, as a consumer, my interest level and thirst for it, boy, really changed. And I don't know if it's my age, like I said, because of my job, but I know all of this, it really finally got to me. And I'm like, I get it.
Well, I mean, look, Mac, give yourself a break. Like, really, if it's because I talked to Chris Kleiman before I had a Kansas State game this year, and I asked him like that question, like, hey, why are you still doing this? What's your biggest why? Like a corny question like that. And he was like, I don't even know. And he's like, he was very honest, he said, if you bench a kid, a guy who's a starter, he's more concerned of, hey, I'm still getting the check, right? Like 50% of the guys are still like that. They don't even care if they're not playing, as long as they're still getting paid. And so that, seeing behind that curtain has definitely put a hit into my interest for it. But then I get swept away by all the excitement and hype once we really get going on Saturdays.
I'll tell you an anecdote. I have a friend of mine whose son plays at an SEC school, and he's a walk-on. He'll never see the field ever, but he's a walk-on, and he loves it. He loves it. And the team struggled this season, and his mom and dad, who are alums of the university, went to the game, and they love this school. And they sat in the family section. And they noticed nobody in the family section was cheering for the home team, their team.
Wow.
Nobody. They were just cheering for their kid, nephew, brother, whatever. That's it. And it was everything was tied into cash. He's not seeing the ball enough. He's not getting enough reps. What's this going to do to his draft status? That's it. And, it was funny. And before they even shared with me that anecdote, they said, they were like, I was shocked that they didn't care who won. I'm like, no, it was all about money, wasn't it? They said, yeah. And again, I get it, but I'll still follow it probably until I'm dead. But it really has affected the way and yesterday's, all that noise and nonsense and stuff, I'm like, it's always been flawed, and that's part of it's like no one's ever complained about the playoff process and the NHL, NBA, NHL, nobody. Yeah. And this one, because it's so flawed, you leave yourself wide open to criticism, which I think now as I get older and I'm part of this, and you probably were ahead of me on this, that's half the fun.
Sure. Oh man, it really is. All right. One or two more items with you quickly. Sure. Great story on Tom Hicks yesterday or 2 days ago. And it talks about his contributions, through the Mavs and through the Rangers, and the Stars, and what he did to North Texas. Can you bring a little bit to the audience, just how important he was? In the story, you say he wasn't Jerry Jones level of importance, but he was pretty important.
Where do you live?
I'm from Philadelphia. Now I live in Flower Mound. I'm back and forth from Flower Mound.
Okay. So we've seen, if you're from Philly, certainly Jeffrey Lurie with the Eagles has been pretty instrumental. Every now and then you'll see a sports owner who does a lot more than just own the team and sit in the suite and sign the checks and hold the trophy, right? Tom, and I want to say this, I really like the man. I covered the Dallas Stars as a beat writer, the Texas Rangers as a beat writer. Obviously when newspapers were much bigger then. So I was on the road a lot, and he was great to me. He was so good to me. He was such a nice man. In fact, he actually—
That's a huge deal. Where the owner is that's a huge deal when the owner is taking time to talk to a beat writer, a young guy that's.
And then not only that, it was such a great. Yeah, he would ask me. I remember he would call me and he would say, "What do you think?" And I'll never forget that. I'll never forget that when he asked me, "What do you think?" Well, that an owner would ask me what I thought. And that when I got older, I realized he understood. I was in the locker room all the time. I was on road trips. I was staying in the team hotels. I was hearing things that I would be honest with him
really
about.
Cool.
Oh, it was great. He actually offered me a job. He offered me a job working for the Rangers, and he was great. And the thing
what
that
job?
made him
was it what job was it? Like PR writing for the team, broadcast?
No, this was like in 07, and you can appreciate this. By that point, I had realized the time commitment involved in Major League Baseball. That's a lifestyle, right? And that's not 9 to 5. That's 9 to 11:30, right?
Yeah.
So he had offered me a job. It would have been in marketing, but the person I interviewed with, I don't think I've ever told this story. I kept it quiet forever. I think the person I interviewed with was John Daniels, the GM. And what I missed in that moment was that was not going to be a marketing job. I was going to be in baseball ops, because he was saying, okay, you would do this, this, and this. And there were responsibilities that all had to do with baseball operations, like personnel things. And
wow, you didn't take it.
Well, I didn't. And I'm really glad I didn't. I'm really glad I didn't, because I was afraid of what it was going to do to my personal life.
Yeah.
And I was not in that window of life anymore. We were talking about having a kid and all that. And I'm so glad I didn't do it. I know I do wonder sometimes.
Yeah.
But, no, seriously, it's like anything. You're like, well, how would it have been different? I think the truth is, if I had taken it, I probably would have been fired, because Tom sold the team like 2 years later when he went into bankruptcy. So
then you would have gotten a job with the Dodgers. I mean, I
would have been the GM of the Dodgers.
Yeah, what are we talking about here? You would have already been on your way, dude.
So I think if I'm being honest with myself about it, when you open a media guide and you see like the staff directory, and it's just fleet of middle-aged white guys wearing a suit and tie, that would have been me. I think. But
yes.
So Tom had me at his house. I visited his house in La Jolla, all this. I mean, I really, and if I have, and this still bothers me to this day. When I turned him down, I called him and he didn't pick up, and I left a message. I never talked to him again. And that bugs me. Even last week, I was thinking about talking to somebody about Tom, because Tom was a really influential guy at the University of Texas, and specifically with its football program. Like if you go if you go to Darrell K. Memorial Stadium, you'll see the Tom Hicks entrance or whatever it is. His name's someplace on that building. And I never did talk to him again. And I always kick myself that I didn't handle it as well as I could, because I was very grateful. And it wasn't just that. I mean, he transformed Dallas. And he was one of those involved owners. But he wasn't like Jerry, who made the decision. He's like, what are we doing here? We need to do this. He was the one who wanted to go out and get A-Rod. He was the one who made that happen. And remember, that was an enormous deal, the fact that the Texas Rangers signed Alex Rodriguez.
Well, you know what, Matt? Let me jump in. I just watched the A-Rod doc, and I didn't put all this together till this conversation. Mm-hmm. When A-Rod mentions, Tom Hicks came to him and said, hey, things have changed for us money-wise. Like, we kind of need to trade you.
Yeah.
Like, if you want to stay, you can stay, and we'll figure it out. But we got to trade you. I mean, that's pretty awesome. Like for an owner that's almost be like, look, we'll figure out a way to keep you here, because I'm sure he made all kinds of promises when he brought him to town.
And I would say this now. I don't. Yeah, I'll say it. So I visited him, Tom. This is like in 2004-ish. I visited him. I interviewed him at his house in La Jolla, California. And that what I remember about it was I was driving to the neighborhood, and it was right on the beach. And if you had seen the house from street side, you would thought that's just a little house on the beach. Like, wow, this really rich guy lives in this tiny little house on the beach. And it did. From the street, that's what it looked like. So then I knock on the door, and Tom answers. He's got newspapers the Dallas Morning News and Fort Worth Star-Telegram delivered to his house. I always remember that. And I go in and then I see this house and I'm like, oh my God, it was huge. And he had a personal chef who basically, I don't know if he lived with him or not, but he was there and he made us lunch. And we sat there and talked for a couple hours. And we talked about everything. And I asked him, I said, was signing A-Rod a mistake? And he said, yeah, it was. And like I said, I don't think I've ever shared that before. It's moot now, because the vision, what Tom had was like what a lot of big market teams' vision, which is we're going to sign all these free agents and we're going to win big and we're going to draw playoff crowds. Playoff crowds is where real revenue is for teams in baseball and hockey. Well, it didn't work. They signed all these overpriced free agents. It didn't work. They had to trade them all. They never got the pitching staff together. His finances changed. It affected the Dallas Stars because he owned both franchises at the same time, and they had to trade him. And if you look at what they traded, they basically just got rid of the contract. And what they got back in return, you're like, oh my God, that's what you got back? And it was one of the players. They gave them like a list of 12 guys, the Yankees did. Pick from this list. Alfonso Soriano was the big part of that trade. The other ones were Joaquin Arias, I believe. And then the other guy they got on the list, but they didn't take Robinson Cano. They took Arias over Cano. And then Cano obviously developed into a terrific player who wound up going to Seattle and getting popped for steroids, by the way. But Tom changed downtown Dallas. He got the American Airlines Center built. That whole area around Victory Plaza developed. He was very influential in the success and the growth of University of Texas athletics, specifically its football team. He was the one who tried to get Nick Saban to replace Mac Brown at UT. That did not go over well. And then, unfortunately, the thing that really made me sad for him is that he was a big player in this town and this state for a long time, almost 15 years, which is a really long period of time. And unfortunately, his business finances just didn't go. They went sideways after the recession in 2008. He had a lot of debt. The banks needed it, and he had to sell both the Rangers and Stars through bankruptcy. And we really never heard from him again. But in that tenure, in his time, he was as significant of a sports owner really in any of the four major sports, and he was a hell of a nice man.
Oh, dude, that's amazing stuff. And the anecdote about the A-Rod mistake, I so appreciate you sharing. Last one. You did a lot of work on. I used to work at the news station in Waco at KWTX years ago. Yeah. So you talked to my buddy Julie Hayes a lot during the Art Brile stuff.
You know Julie?
Yeah, Julie's one of my best friends. And
Julie's great.
Yeah, that's how I started reading you, because I was new to Texas and stuff. And so I ask you, I know you got like some Baylor understanding, probably way more than that, right? What do you think about? And this is the last thing I'll ask you. I know I'll let you go, but what is your this Baylor situation, retaining Dave Aranda, this new AD? To be honest with you, again, there's a ton of stuff I don't know. Certainly doesn't knock me on my ass, right? As this amazing thing. I've heard rumors that guys were offered the job, the AD job, and they said no. So you're hearing all kinds of stuff. But I have some concerns for this athletic department, that it feels like they're pivoting in a way that, you've got Scott Drew, and that guy's on Mount Rushmore, so that's awesome. But and you can't undersell that. But I do worry that the direction is really changing for this athletic department. Tell me I'm wrong, hopefully.
No, I don't think you're wrong. I think all of these universities that are not in the SEC or the Big Ten or Notre Dame, all of them are operating. And I would say all of them now operate with this fear that conference realignment is going to come again, and the gap between the Big Ten and the SEC and everybody else is going to get even wider, and it's going to make them all essentially a group of 5 teams. Look, like we mentioned at the top, group of 5 was treated better than the Big 12 in the last 2 years, combined by the college football playoff. And that's where all the revenue is coming. So all of these universities are really scared about it. And you've seen what Texas Tech has done. Texas Tech's a player, right? You've seen what BYU's done. Regardless of how it was treated, BYU's a player now. Whatever modifications they needed to make to be a member of a power league and to elevate its name outside of just that the Mormon school, right? Well, they've done it. They've been a good partner to the Big 12. Whatever scheduling issues or whatever issues that school used to present to other leagues, it's done. That's behind them. And it's the fact that there are no rules now, and the age thing doesn't really. Remember that for a long time with BYU, there was a big advantage that they enjoyed, is that a lot of these guys would go serve 2-year missions, practice and work out with each other while they were on their missions, come back to Provo for final 2 years of eligibility or 3, and they were grown-ass men.
24, 25.
Yeah. Well, now you're seeing that everywhere. So that's off the table. So you have these other schools that have seen, well, wait a minute, they've really created a gap here, and they're more attractive than us, whatever school. So I think if you're Baylor, which for a while there was really good, had really good seasons, they won a national title in men's basketball, and everybody forgets that. They've been very competitive in women's basketball under Kim Mulkey, who's now at LSU. They've spent a ton of money on athletics and facilities. The campus has grown. It's become an extremely attractive school for Californians who want to come and who can't get into the state schools in California. So they've got all these things going for them, but are they really relevant right now? What do you think?
No, I mean, basketball, I think they will be later in the season, but football, no. They're
so your fears about that, I think, are well founded, and I never thought that they were going to keep Dave Aranda. In fact, I had been assured that once the athletic director Mac Rhodes had resigned, they were going to put in a new AD, and the first thing he was going to do was go find a new football coach.
Yeah.
Well, it didn't happen. The president said, no, we're going to stick with Dave Aranda, nicest guy in the world, very good coach. They have not won. Okay. So they were going to stick with him. They did. Then they hired an AD, a guy who had been there before, knows the Waco community like the back of his hand, worked for Chip and Joanna.
Yeah.
Right. Now he comes in to take over for Mac Rhodes, who had a great 10-year run as AD. And Mac unfortunately resigns because of personal situations. I hear rumors. I don't know what it is.
Yeah.
But in terms of a school, I mean, they are right now the poster child for the school that is in a bad way as college athletics and really football evolves here in the next 5 to 7 years, because you say, okay, what are we? We can't be this bad and then continue on with the path we're on, because that's just going to keep us further and further down. And unless Dave has some magic switch and they're going to flip it, I don't see it. So if I'm in that community, if I'm a member of that school, yes, I would be very concerned.
All right. Well, look, if you want to have a good time after that scary news, go check out the Engel Angle and also read Mac in the Fort Worth Star-Telegram. Man, this is way better than I expected. I didn't think I'd keep you this long. Thank you so much,
That was
Mac.
great. Well, how low were your expectations? Were you just like, we'll have this?
Well, I think of a guy like you coming. I'm like, Mac's probably got a million things going. No, you were so engaged. You were so cool. I appreciate you being so generous with your time and energy. For real. Thank you.
I'll mention it. I appreciate you, and I'm flattered for you taking the time to have me on. Thank you very much. Call me anytime. I'm easily accessible, so anytime.
You got it, man. Thanks, Mac. There he goes. Man, that was awesome. Guy that I've been reading for a very long time. Hey, they say don't meet your heroes. Come on now. Yeah, Mac was the man. That was a lot of fun. All right, we're going to come back a little bit more on the college football playoff. We're going to get Scotty and I are going to go back and check out our brackets from the beginning of the season. And we'll also talk a little bit more about some bowl games. I just circled a couple bowl games that are attractive to me and make me think, okay, the bowl season isn't totally hopeless. There's some fun games out there, and I'll be interested to see what the participation is like this year. We'll talk a little